This is the Mentors for Military podcast.
Hey everybody, this is Robert Gowan. Welcome to the Mentors for Military podcast, and we're going to do something a little bit different in this situation. This is the first time we've actually done a video taping. So we've got the whole crew here, and in this case, I thought it might be kind of cool for people to associate the voice now with the person. So with me saying that I'm Robert, to my left is the guest. We'll introduce him in just a second. But to my right, we can go around.
Yeah, I'm Don.
Paul Martinez.
AJ. Nikki.
Scott.
All right, and we can't, Scott, you'll always know your voice. Very different. So we'd like to thank, of course, our sponsor, Uncana. And Uncana is a veteran-owned CBD company. And if you're not familiar with them, please check them out. You can use the code MIL, and you get a 20% discount. And that discount typically is applied in their Uncana website for only LEO and veteran verified individuals. So what's cool about that is, in your case, you can actually go on and use the code MIL, get that code every day, regardless of your status. So take advantage of that. Some great products, that's actually checked out from seed to sell. They're doing things along the ISO 9001, the CGMP, the FDA guidelines. So good company, great products. Be sure to follow them. Also, Tactical Brewing hooked us up today. They were on our podcast, and they helped us out by giving us some of their products. So we want to give a shout out to them and saying, hey, thanks a lot, Tactical Brewing. They're down in Orlando, Florida. Check them out if you ever go down to Disney World or if you live down in the Orlando area. So we're going to go ahead and kick into this. And this time I want to go ahead and introduce you, Red, because we barely know that much about you. And that's the whole exciting thing about doing a podcast, is that we get a chance to actually dive into you. So in most cases, people would be listening to this, and I'd have to say something like, hey, start talking or tell me a little bit about yourself so that we can get into your background. But we already know that you came from Ranger Bat, but my curiosity is, did you come from Philly where you are now, or where was it that you originally started?
As far as how did I get into the military?
Yeah, where did you come from?
So that started in Philadelphia.
You did? Okay.
Yep. And I actually had no intention of joining the military.
Really?
Yeah, none at all. And I think 9/11 obviously changed everything. And from there, it took me a couple years to get my life together, and then realize I needed to do something. But the biggest defining moment was when they started putting the names of everybody who died in the World Trade Center. I saw the name Redifer, and I realized that it was, So same name, definitely had an emotional response, and really changed my life big time.
Any relation? Did you ever find out?
No, I never really dug too deep, but it's such a unique name. There's a high probability there's some type of relation.
Yeah.
But again, I never dug deeper than that. I just knew that there was a significant emotional response on my end. And honestly, before that, I just wanted to sing in a punk rock band and ride BMX bikes. And
rock on. I didn't know that. I would have never guessed that by looking at it.
Yeah, so that was the life I was living. And it all changed. But it didn't, it wasn't fast. It took about 2 years to get it together to finally make it to the recruiter. And I remember sitting bartending and arguing with customers at the bar, and realizing, what am I doing here just arguing with these people? This isn't going to change anything. I got 2 good arms, 2 good legs. I got a brain in between my ears somewhere, and probably should do something about it. So went down to the recruiters, and some other things happened. I joined.
Yeah. So was it option 40 in infantry, or what was your option? What did you do?
So this is kind of ridiculous. I ended up, the first thing I wanted to do was join the Coast Guard.
Yeah.
And so
Coast Guard.
Yeah.
Why the Coast Guard?
Well, all right. In my confusion and my lack of understanding of how the military works, there was an anti-aircraft gun on Delaware Avenue in Philadelphia, which I know now is just a piece of equipment. It's not real. Oh. And I really thought that somebody sat on that thing and shot airplanes out of the sky. And I was awesome. I want that job. Yeah. so I went to the recruiter, and I was like, yeah, I want that job. And they're like, what? No. And so I started down the path of the Coast Guard, and then they gave me a long list of why I can't join the Coast Guard. So I was like, all right, cool. So I guess I'll just be a SEAL. So I went over to the Navy recruiter, figured that'd be pretty easy. Yeah. And everything was going just fine with them. And I went to go sign on the dotted line, and they saw I had tattoos, and they were like, no, get out. And I was like, what do you mean get out? And they're like, yeah, you can't have tattoos. And I'm like, you're the Navy. You're known for like spinach and tattoos and boats. Like, right. and they were like, yeah, we're trying to change our image. And I'm like, dude, it's time of war. And they're like, yeah, sorry. So I was like, I guess I'll just be a PJ. So I went over to the
Air Force was definitely not.
Yeah. So I went over to the Air Force office, and they basically threw things at me. So I wasn't allowed to go in there.
Really?
Yep.
What? Wait, what are they?
Because it's the Air Force.
Because it's the Air Force. Yeah, tattoos. I was too old. I was in a coma at one point in my life. So there was a long list of reasons I cannot join the Air Force. So at that point I gave up on wanting to join the military. I'm like, oh man, I guess I just can't join the military. And I saw an advertisement in the Philadelphia Inquirer for Philadelphia police. And in my mind, I thought you could just become a detective. I know you can't do that now.
Yeah, you gotta walk the beat.
Yeah. There's a process. So I went to go take the civil service exam at City Hall, and I couldn't find the office for the test. And I'm like, man, I can't find this office anywhere. So I called my dad, who's a retired cop. I'm like, Dad, where's the office for the civil service exam? And he goes, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm going to become a detective. And he's like, what? And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to become a detective. And he's like, all right, you failed the first test of being a detective. You can't find the office. And I'm like, oh, that's pretty rough, Dad. So he goes, all right, idiot. He goes, turn around, go back down Broad Street, go to the Army recruiter. They just changed their tattoo policy. I'm like, I don't want to join the Army. He's like, join the Army, idiot. You're not doing anything with your life. And I'm like, all right. So I went back, and sure enough, I had to get a couple tattoos covered up. But yeah, my initial contract was, I think it was for SF.
Was it really 18 X-ray then?
Yeah, and this is where things get kind of weird, because it was intent for SF, if that makes any sense at all. And they said, we're going to sign off as long as you score over a 280 or a 300 on the PT test. And I was like, cool. So I got a 300 on my second PT test, and they're like, awesome, you're going to go to SF. And then like a week later, the drill sergeant was like, no, you're going to Rangers. And I was like, oh, all right, I guess I'll do that. So
how do they switch that? If you were 18 X-ray,
I have no idea.
So because I'm confused. I mean, you were an OSUT commander, and so I'm curious how that went down. Is it like they can just make a decision like that on the fly? I would have thought that he had some say-so in that.
Well, I mean, it goes back to what the contract said. You'd have to look back and see what that is. Yeah. But there's some have it in contracts. Some they come and say, hey, who wants to volunteer for this?
But you didn't volunteer. You were volunteered.
Yes.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah.
Well, I feel like they might have done a little bit of profiling on you and been like, we can get this guy to sign on the line. This is going to be better for him. Is that similar situation?
It sounds to me like there's a carrot being dangled in front of somebody who's keen to do a specific route, and they've said everything you wanted to hear until you signed on that line.
Yeah.
Actually, you can't go SF. You can go into something else. How many years was you a recruiter?
Yes. Yes, I was. But that would have been the guidance counselor down there. But they must have set something up where you thought you were going to 18 X-ray, and maybe you were some kind of unassigned or something, that they had the option, like you're saying, to be able to switch to, I don't know. I've never...
Did you ever see any paperwork saying SF?
Yeah, it's really easy to get out of an 18X contract. I mean, you just say, I don't want it.
What'd you say, Scott?
Did Red ever see any paperwork that said SF on it?
Oh, I don't know. This is going back 16 years. It's probably at the bottom of the pile somewhere.
Yeah.
I really haven't looked over it.
Yeah. So I think then after you went through and they decided to talk to you into, or told you were going into the Ranger option and everything, you end up going to airborne school.
Yep.
And then you end up going to RASP.
RIP.
RIP.
Yeah.
You were RIP.
Yeah, it was RIP back then. Back when it was hard.
Back when.
Absolutely.
That's hilarious. So, some of the guys that were in airborne school with you, I'm sure that they got the same kind of option. They came over and probably recruited a bunch of those guys as well, I'm assuming, or even in OSUT when you were in one station unit training?
The only guy I remember that went through with me is Chris Green. I actually texted him earlier today. He lives somewhere around here, so we'll probably meet up later.
Yeah.
But he and I went through basic together, went through airborne together. We had RIP contracts, I guess, and he's the only one I recall that we went through everything together. We both ended up in 175 together. But through the entire time, he and I, best friends the whole time. It was great.
Yeah, well, that is good to have kind of a buddy along the whole
Yeah.
path there.
Yeah.
So you were assigned 175.
Yep.
By selection, or was it one of these things random? You three guys going third, you guys going second bet, you guys going first, or?
So as I recall, there was a wish list.
Yeah.
And you could choose where you wanted to go. There was, we were talking about this earlier, there was an air quote boxing ring in the back where if you got assigned to a unit you didn't want to go to, like if you got assigned to 375 and you wanted to go to 175, which is pretty common,
Yeah.
you can figure it out in the boxing ring. So there was a little section back there that was roped off, and
And once you had a meeting of the minds, and you come back and you tell the RI, or you tell the RASP guys and stuff, the NCO, all right, I want to go second, and he wants to go third, right, Joe? And then you both nod and
yeah, after you beat
One
the
of you-
shit out of the guy.
That's right.
Yeah.
oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yep. Conflict resolution ring. Yeah, that's
How
what
come this is the first I've heard of this? As many guys that we've actually talked to that's gone through, RIP and RASP, I've never heard of the boxing ring.
Well, they've used it for different purposes.
Oh,
That's the thing.
okay.
It's for ropes, right?
Right.
You
Yeah.
practice your knots on
Practice
the
your lowers.
that are tied between the trees.
Yeah.
It's prep for ranger school.
It's
It's
also good for beating the crap out of
Yeah.
fellow Rangers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Getting
what-
duty assignments.
What year was this for starting in RASP?
For RIP?
Yeah,
for 04, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
When were you an NCO at an RI at Ranger School?
Oh, so I left there in 2002 I left.
Okay, so well before that. So when you went to 175, what was that like, arriving there for the first time? New recruit.
Yeah, that was a shock. As every Ranger has said, you're coming from thinking you're the badass of whatever city, town, borough you come from, and then suddenly you're surrounded by everybody who thinks the same exact thing,
Yeah.
and it's just doors are opening and guys are attacking you. And I thought I could hide in my car. I remember me and Green hiding in the car, and these Tab Spec 4s pulled us out, and it was a long night. I don't think I should divulge too much, but it was pretty brutal. So it was pretty painful, but a lot of good information, a lot of education, a lot of reality checks happening all at once.
Yeah.
Pain-related learning.
Yeah.
So really at that time frame, there wasn't a whole lot that was going on because, let's see, well, when was the first time that you guys took off and deployed then?
When I showed up, the regiment was already deployed.
Oh, was it? Okay.
So we had rear D, and then dudes who just graduated Ranger School. So those guys were really stoked on smoking new Rangers. So it was a lot of fun for me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't think that you guys were gone at that time frame. Okay, so
Yeah.
No, we started deploying in October of 2001.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've been continuously deployed since a month after.
But 2000,
9/11.
I didn't think like 2000. You said 2004, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
3 or
since
4, something like
2001,
that.
Yeah.
Regiment's been rotating over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When was the first time that you ended up deploying, and were you had you gone to Ranger School first, or did you end up getting deployed before you ended up going to Ranger School?
So I deployed 2 times before Ranger School. And I was actually going to get medically released from Ranger School because they learned that I had phase 2 primary hypertension, and I had no idea I had it. And one day after PT, I'm like, man, my head really hurts and I can't hear anything and I'm not seeing straight. And Doc was like, dude, what is wrong with you? I'm like, I don't know. And he's like, let's go check this out. And my blood pressure was 220/190. And yeah, so that's a little high. And
You're making
Little bit.
the nurse over here very nervous. So.
yeah.
220 or 190.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, they took me over to the hospital and checked me out. And, hypertension pretty bad. We started monitoring it. Started with I guess beta blockers, a water pill. I don't know, some
Yeah.
crap pills. And eventually got it under control. But they kept telling me, they were like, First Sergeant Sal was like, Red, he's like, you're a good Ranger, but you'll never progress here. You're never going to make it past private first class because you can't get your tab. If you can't get your tab, you can't get promoted. So we'll send you anywhere you want. You want to go to Italy, we'll send you to Italy. Hawaii, we'll send you to Hawaii, wherever you want. I was like, I signed on the dotted line, signed to be a Ranger. I'm going to stay, and that's it. I don't care about the promotion. I'm going to do what I signed up for. And he's like, hey, roger that. So,
Because of your medical condition? Because of your blood pressure?
correct. Okay. Yeah. So that way I couldn't go. They wouldn't medically sign me off to go to Ranger school because that was a risk. So on the way home from my second deployment, we were in Germany, and I remember we were sitting at the airport, and the doc came up, and he's like, Red, you still want to go to Ranger school? I was like, yes, absolutely, sir. And he goes, all right, well, the battalion surgeon or whomever just signed himself off, and he also has phase 2 primary hypertension, the same exact medical condition that you have. And I was like, okay. And they're like, as long as he doesn't die, you can go. Like, it doesn't matter if he passes or not, but if he doesn't die, you can go. And I was like, sweet.
So he was going to Ranger school as well, signed himself off.
Correct.
And he was going to be the guinea pig for
Yeah.
you to be able
Yeah,
think
to...
that's
because he had all the
gold
rank
there.
and
him
stuff.
to sign you off.
Yeah.
He didn't have to
You go
pass
to
land
Ranger
nav. He just couldn't die.
Right. Yeah, just don't die. Yeah.
That's crazy.
You can't
So
sign
he
your
didn't
own
die. I
thing.
think he passed. And
At least
so
as far as you know, because you got to go to school, right?
that's true. Yeah. His story didn't really matter to me as long as he didn't die. But I went to Ranger school. We ended up going together.
Yep. Same class.
Yep. I went to school with a brand new torn IT band, so that was fun.
Nice.
Yeah. And refused to quit and just kind of sucked that up too.
So you weren't a recycle anytime through it?
No.
All the way through.
Thankfully, I went straight through. I'm not really sure how, but I did.
So was anybody checking you out physically during this time frame, knowing of your condition, or no one knew about it whatsoever because you were cleared?
Ranger school is kind of a blur, so I'm not really sure. I assume so. I know they were looking at me because of my my torn IT band, so I'm sure they were looking at me medically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I was just kind of curious about that because I would have thought if they knew anything about the condition, they'd probably, maybe periodically stop, check, make sure, okay,
Yeah.
you're good, yeah, keep
Yeah.
going, that kind of good stuff. So made it through all the way the first time, ended up going back to 175. So did you end up staying there the whole time in your career?
No. I was in 175 for so my whole active duty career. I was there for 6 years, 9 months, 24 days.
Not that
You know
count
it like
Yeah.
to the T.
I don't know how many hours, so I don't know.
Made that much of an impact. on
Yeah.
you.
So after battalion, I ended up going to Fort Carson and became a combatives instructor.
Okay.
And so for my last 2 or 3, whatever it was, few years of active duty, all I did was fight, and it was awesome. My boss, Steve Martin and Yako Kalili, big names.
Not the
in,
comedian.
No,
Yeah.
no. But no, they were big names in the modern Army combatives world, and it was a great transition going from angry Ranger, the way we work, the way we function, and it works in that environment, in that world. But if I were to act the way I was acting as a Ranger in the civilian world, I wouldn't have gotten very far at all. So made my way into the combatives fight house, and from there, teaching at Fort Carson, I was teaching everybody from 10 Special Forces group all the way down to like the admin for the medical detachment. Like, so all different personality types. So I'm used to screaming and yelling at people in Ranger Regiment. Like, if you don't do it, hit the wood line, it's going to get done. If you don't do it enough, I'm going to kick you out. Like, I had to learn tact and how to communicate with different people. And that really helped me out in dividends and civilian world.
So some people are going to be listening to this and they're not going to understand what you're describing there as this course and what you're teaching and everything else. So go into kind of a little bit of a detail for people who are not familiar with the Army and not familiar with this type of, for the training and stuff.
For the Modern Army Combatives?
Yeah.
So right now, Modern Army Combatives, it's like our own internal fight system. And there's 3 levels to it. There used to be 4, now there's 3. There's basic, tactical, and master. The basic course is a 40-hour course, and it's teaching you, the primary focus is your ground fighting. So it comes from Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, and eventually you're working your way up to wearing full kit, going inside a room, having people with blotter suits on, them attacking you, using escalation of force, trying to de-escalate a situation. If you can't use your words, you got to use your hands. And then it just gets more and more difficult each time. But But
Is this something that you guys go through in the security forces? I'm curious in the Air Force.
Yes.
'Cause you teach-
They
you
teach
teach-
us a lot of
yeah.
combative stuff. At the end of the day, you don't want to pull your weapon on somebody because you're trying to de-escalate that situation. But what was like 90% of the fights end up on the floor, so you have to figure out how you can get out of that with all your gear on.
Right. Jiu-jitsu is a lot of what you guys end up doing.
yes,
Right? Yeah.
yes,
You ended up doing that for how many years?
2-3 years, something like
Okay.
that.
So
Yeah.
then where did you go after that? Because you still had a couple, you ended up spending 16 total, right?
No, 6 years, 9 months, 24 days, so close to 7 years. But no, I'm 16 years total so far.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, that got
All right.
confusing.
Okay.
All right. So after that,
Yes.
I got I got out of active duty.
Yeah.
And from there, the only infantry billet they had for me was in the New Jersey National Guard. So I moved back to Pennsylvania. I was an infantryman in a regular line infantry unit. And
You had to pay for your own expenses each weekend to go drill.
yes, I mean,
Yeah.
they pay you too.
Yeah, well,
Not much.
Yeah, right. But I mean, your transportation and stuff, it's
Yeah.
not like, it's like if you don't have a unit that's close by you and you decide that you're going to go to a different state,
Mm-hmm.
whether you're flying or whatever, you're paying for that.
Yeah, for the most
Really?
part. I think there's something with distance. They do pay for it depending on how far it is. Like,
Yeah.
but for me, like when I was in Jersey, it's about an hour drive. They're not paying me for that.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm with Maryland. It's about an hour and a half. They don't pay for that.
Right.
But you
Right.
know, we're obviously not doing it for the pay.
Yeah, right.
But yeah.
And
So
how often do you go and do that, Red? Every weekend?
no, 1 week in a month, on average. Sometimes it gets every now and again we'll split a month, do a little bit longer than 1 weekend, so make up the time, and then it's the 1 week a year type deal.
So does the Guard still have LRP and LRC units? Long Range Patrol?
I don't know.
Okay. I
Yeah.
didn't know if you were a part of that because
No.
of your background.
No.
Yeah, okay.
So I started with Jersey Guard, just regular infantry, and then I got the position as the Sniper Reconnaissance Platoon Sergeant for the Jersey Guard. It was a 114th, and that was pretty cool. And I was able to go to sniper school from there, which was something I've always wanted to do. So I'm sniper qualified. That's about it. Like I was saying earlier, I'm like the world's okay as sniper. I've got it on paper. That's about it. But it was fun. But trying to compare the Guard to what I did on active duty, it wasn't anywhere close.
Yeah. Lots of barbecues and
No.
yeah.
But so I left. I left the Guard. I went IRR for a year while I went through the police academy. And while I was going through the police academy, somebody came up to me and told me about civil affairs. And I was like, "Oh, I don't know what that is. Not really interested." And they're like, "Well, you get to jump out of planes again." I was like, "Oh, all right, I could jump out of planes
Got my
again."
attention.
Yeah. So I kind of thought more and more about it, and I was like, well, all I'm doing in this National Guard infantry is comparing it to active duty. And it's just, I'm going to have a cognitive dissonance the entire time. Like, I won't be able to enjoy myself because all I'm going to be able to do is compare it. So I might as well start something completely new. I know nothing about civil affairs, but I know I get to jump out of airplanes, and that scares me. So that means I should probably focus on the thing that scares me. So that's good, because it's good to be scared, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So then I went to
Just
civil affairs.
For a second,
Yeah.
for the British guy in the room. So you're in the National Guard.
Yeah.
You was hoping to transition into the police force,
Yeah.
and they've got an airborne unit in the police force. Is that right? Is that what you're saying?
No.
That is incorrect.
Yes.
Right.
Incorrect.
That's what I was confusing myself.
Not
How
right.
He was going for the police, and they've got some kind of airborne capability within the police.
Not
That'd be
yet.
pretty
Yeah,
cool.
not yet.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will sign up.
They
Shortly
Halo jump
followed by
in
the
as a
space.
criminal on the
Me
run.
too.
Yeah.
Space Police.
Space Force, Halo.
So no, he ended up going civil affairs while in the Guard, but he had just graduated or completed the police force academy, right?
So what's the civil affairs part?
Civilians, that's the National Guard again.
Right.
Well, it's
Right.
reserves,
Yeah,
but
so,
close.
So he was infantry,
Yep.
National Guard, went civil affairs,
Okay.
because he could jump out of planes again.
Okay.
It's a good deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I can't make the link between.
Well, he didn't make.
airplanes
He
and
couldn't make the link between civil affairs. It was
Yeah.
just that he could jump,
I
and
don't
that's what.
understand that part.
Yeah.
Figure the rest out.
Yes.
I
Figure it out.
Leave it at, I don't understand that.
Yeah, we'll tell you afterwards.
Why do civil affairs jump out of airplanes?
Why?
Yeah.
So the last time we did a mission or a training exercise, Sabre Guardian, and I was a 4-man civil affairs unit, and we were attached to. It was something ridiculous in the hundreds of this airfield seizure, MLAT, whatever it's called now, with the 173rd and all sorts of other nationalities. And we jumped in, did the airfield seizure. Well, civil affairs, we went off and did our thing. So
What is your thing?
talking to people,
Okay.
kind of what we're doing now. Yeah. So you go into atmospherics, key leader engagements, find out what the people need, what they're missing, how can the U.S. help them. You know, we're all in this big
Hearts and
picture.
mind type things. Right?
Hearts and minds, yes. So
That sounds nice and warm.
it
doesn't
does.
Yeah. The hearts and minds of our
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. So I went from Ranger Battalion to Hearts and Minds.
That's like major.
Teddy bears
Yeah.
and
But
peaches.
for those listening, I mean, why that's important, if you don't know what an airfield seizure is, you know, we need entry into a country that is hostile or for whatever reason. So you send in the paratroopers and they jump in, but everybody that's operating that airport, whether it's an actual airport or a military airport, is not hostile. But we need them to have that airfield functional so that we can get more of our forces in there, establish a foothold, and that's sort of how we're going to go from there. So it makes perfect sense to have
Yep.
a civil affairs that's airborne qualified, because then you can get them on the ground immediately, get the tower up, and get those people that know how to run that
The
facility
role of it
working.
and the function of it makes complete sense to me. It's
Right.
the terminology, the mnemonical, civil affairs. Where's
Right.
the
Well, in a way,
civil
you're
part
building
of it?
that partnership with those people.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
Sure.
They can help you in a way.
Right, because if we just jump into the Baghdad airport and kill all
Take
the
over.
people
they'll-
from
they'll
Iraq,
be hostile.
we may not know how to work their towers, their
So-
systems,
So
those
in
things.
the UK, so we do something pretty similar.
Mm-hmm.
So we've obviously got a parachute capability, an airborne capability to jump in, and then my former regiment, the Royal Engineers, would be able to go in and do airfield and ground through the parachute squadron within that. Now, as an electrician in the military, so there was key points in the world that were UK bases that if something happened, for example, the Falkland Islands, because we had previously that issue with Argentina in 1982. So when I did my electrical course, my advanced one, I actually got flown down there was about 12 of us got flown down to the Falklands and learned how to run the entire power station down there. So if something happened again, all the civilians got flown out, wherever we were in terms of our postings, and we could all be in different units, they would just say, right, you got to go on a plane down to the Falklands, and we'd have to go in and take over the running of the power station. And that rotated through different places in every year.
So you're like Finn on Star Wars.
Yeah, something like that. I got the Falklands. The other one was in Cyprus, which is a lot nicer than the Falklands. And I think the other one was in Belize, which is, again, nicer than the Falklands.
much
So I got the
nicer.
cold, shitty part,
Yeah.
as always.
Must have made quite the impression.
Yeah.
So what is the role? Is there a role not in the British Army whatsoever for civil affairs?
There is. We just probably got a better name for it.
Oh, well, of course, you're the British, right? So getting back to your story, Ray. So thanks for sharing what civil affairs does and everything. So while you were in civil affairs, you were also a police officer.
Yes.
And in Philadelphia?
Yeah, in the
Proper?
Philadelphia area.
Okay.
So I'm in a township that is on the border of Philadelphia.
Okay.
Yep.
And so how many years now have you been with them?
3 years with the police department.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how much difference did you see that making the transition? Well, first off, I want to ask you, how was the transition? Because, I mean, you jumped, sure, you went into the Guard, you had a little bit of sense of service still that was belonging. You're now with a different team of individuals that, are they, in your mind, are they very similar in mindset and approach and everything? Or what was the difference and what was the struggle you had getting out? I'm sorry, there's a lot of questions, but I mean.
It's all right.
Yeah.
I'll try to hit one at a time. Let's say the similarities and differences between police and military. There are commonalities.
Yeah.
You're going to get different personalities, and everybody's there for pretty much the same reason. You're going to get different levels of motivation. But what it comes down to is who you surround yourself with, right?
Yeah.
So we can always choose like our core 5, and then from that we can influence more people. And whatever mission that you're on, hopefully those people are on the same mission. And if they're not, hey, find some new people.
Yeah.
Just like in the military, you got the people that you probably don't want to hang out with, and the ones you want to aspire to be like, and then other ones that are on the same mission. Next thing you know, those 5 people are always hanging out together, and you eventually become the sum of the 5 people you hang out with the most.
Yeah.
And it's the same in the police department. I mean, it's a high threat environment, a lot of unknowns, a lot of risk, but yeah.
So did you end up going into anything specialized because of the fact that you had Ranger or you had Sniper? Was that a benefit? Did you see that, or did you use that as a benefit inside an LEO environment?
Yeah. So I recently made the SWAT team.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Nice.
Thank you. Which that was like a huge, that was the goal for me besides becoming a cop.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to be a SWAT officer, and made SWAT team, I think like 4 months ago or something like that. So pretty stoked.
So what was the training like for that in comparison than to say, some of the stuff that you've already gone through?
It's all pretty similar, just a lot shorter. Just because, we got to go home to our families every day. It's not like a lockdown type thing.
Oh, it's not. So I always wondered about that when you go through the training. You're not in a compound. It's not like you're going through, some kind of training where you're getting to know your teammates, and that's what you're focused on. You go home every night.
Yeah.
Oh.
But it's different everywhere. Like I can't give broad strokes for all police departments because everybody runs it the same way. And Pennsylvania, we have so many different townships and boroughs. Everybody, you can almost make up your own rules. Besides the fact that you still have to meet the standards of the SWAT teams, like across the board. But there's other like state police. I'm pretty sure they have some type of barracks type situation or full-time SWAT teams. I'm not sure about. But like for me, for my job, I'm still a patrolman. I go out on the street, and then I have an additional duty as a SWAT officer.
Okay, so you're not just on a. I've always wondered about that.
Yeah.
You're not like a SWAT team that's all you do, and you're waiting for the buzzer to ring to use your skills. You're basically walking the beat, and when you get the call, you then flip into SWAT mode.
That's correct.
Oh.
There's some cities though where it is a full-time team. So like Los Angeles, I think New York also has a full-time team. So I think it just depends on the population and how big. Yeah.
So I forgot Nikki, new job is with the sheriff's department.
So with the San Bernardino Sheriff's Department, I'm doing the air rescue program. Yes.
Yeah.
But I've also flown with the LA sheriffs, their Air 5 rescue helicopter, which is all SWAT, or all of those guys are part of the SWAT team, and they went to their rescue platform.
Yeah.
But they all have to be tactical first. So they're very unique in that sense.
We forgot
I
to
think.
share with you, Nikki's our resident badass. So,
No.
so anyway, with you guys and stuff, and coming out and making the transition out and stuff, are you able to go in and transition from security forces into any type of LEO environment rather quickly and like SWAT and stuff?
Yeah.
Or okay.
Actually, a lot of our training, we're able to go to the civilian equivalent if it's offered in our city. So, for example, we go through SWAT training with San Antonio Police Department, and they'll certify us. We don't have any jurisdiction off base, but then whenever we get out, a lot of security forces members decide to pursue that, and then they already have those qualifications. So it's
I was going to say, you're a card-carrying member at that point. So you can just go in there and go, hey, listen, I've already gone through that's cool.
So can you transfer directly into a police SWAT type role?
Yes and no. I mean, we still have to do additional training. We still have to do the basic stuff.
Yeah.
But it kind of gets our foot in the door.
Okay.
Okay. So now that you're SWAT, now that you're cop, I know that one of the things that we've talked about a lot on this podcast is that in the sense of, say, post-traumatic stress, the LEOs live in a very different environment because of the fact you walk the beat or drive by with your family. Even in your off hours, you're constantly reminded of the situation and the environment of which it happened. For us who were in the military, may have acquired post-traumatic stress and get out, that's over there 3,000 miles.
Right.
So that's a very difficult thing that I think a lot of people don't really think about. We focus a lot on post-traumatic stress within the military, but we don't think a lot about the LEO environment. Now I'm just curious, your perspective of working around those guys, how you look at that now, you know, and
it is significantly different, just like you said, the space and distance. And in the military, I mean, we come home to the States, you're safe. We all get to high five each other. It's no big deal. And everybody's congratulating each other. And just like you said, like with the police department, you know, I might have something horrible happen right in front of me and I have to go home and maybe I'll drive by that scene. I don't know if I compartmentalize it or whatever. I talk to like other officers about certain situations. Like we'll kind of give our own little AARs. We've had a couple situations where we've really like analyzed what we did right, what we did wrong. But as far as like driving by an area where I've had like a significant issue, I can't really let it bother me too much because I'm going to go back to that same area over and over and over again. I can't just relive a bad scenario every single time, or I just won't be able to do my job. I just have to let that be in the past, learn from my mistakes, and continue with the good things I was doing at that moment. And yeah.
Wow, that's got to be tough though.
So you have to shift your mindset. You can't always think of the negative. You have to think of the positive.
Yeah.
How do you do that? Because it sounds a lot easier said than done. No.
Yeah.
If you have a memory, whether it be a good one or a bad one, it's there. So how do you do that shift?
I'm not really sure. Maybe I guess it's just being in the moment more. Because as a cop, we have to understand we might just go from one call where it's a guy with a gun or a domestic violence type thing and like absolutely horrible, and the next thing might just be an old lady locked out of her car. Like I'm not going to bring the same stress and horror that I just dealt with the last call and help the old lady locked out of her car. Vice versa, I'm not going to like show up all willy-nilly to a domestic situation.
Can you please give me the gun?
Yeah. So it's just turning it on and off. I'm not sure exactly how we do it, but it's just done.
Would you say it goes back to how you guys were trained prior to being police officers?
As far as police officers, well, I think it's more on the job training and it's learning from each other. The training, just like basic training in the Army, it's basic. You know, you're going to get it once you're on the street, and you're going to see those other people that you admire, that you want to be like, and you're going to follow what they do. And hopefully you chose the right person, and kind of see how they emotionally deal with each situation. And then I've had a few times I've pulled guys aside, like, hey man, how do you feel about that? Like, and we've just had like open, honest conversations, because like we're all ego monsters, so you're not going to say it in front of other people, or you're going to get made fun of, and that hurts too.
So how do you think the transition went for you then?
From the military to civilian life?
Yeah.
That was pretty rough.
Why so?
Yeah, so the Philadelphia area, the only other Ranger I know of is my buddy Tom DeVitro, and I didn't meet him until a few years after I got out. So I really didn't have any other Rangers to talk to. And I met my wife before I got out. And so my wife Shannon and I bought a house, and we were closing on the house. And while we were waiting on that, I had to live at my parents' house, which was cool, but depressing. Like I just went through all this and went through 4 deployments on active duty and got all these awards for a hero, and next thing I know, I'm like living at mommy and daddy's house. And I appreciate what they were doing, but I didn't realize how emotionally it was hurting me, like not being on my own again, suddenly having to be back home as a grown man. And it was very odd. And the worst feeling was collecting unemployment. Like I hated that. Like I felt like such a loser, and they're like, no, you earned that. And I'm like, I earned my paycheck. Like and it got to the point where I was drinking way too much. We eventually moved out. We got the house, started our life again, and I was putting in applications everywhere. And I really thought it was going to be a smooth transition. Like, oh, this Special Operations Army Ranger, combatives instructor, anybody's going to hire him. Just drop of a hat. No, wasn't that at all. No, I actually needed to work for it. And it was a big eye opener.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I worked for Rob for years, and I was going to transition out of the military. And you go back home, or you go back to where you're from, and there's nobody that relates that asks, "Oh, you were in the Army. What'd you do?" Well, it doesn't do me any good to tell you because you're not going to relate to it.
Yeah.
We didn't go camping, and this was pre 9/11.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing. I'm transitioning. I'm going to a course. They're not paying me yet till I get my certification, so I'm entitled to an unemployment. And I go down there, and it's like, you know what? I'm absolutely not sitting here. I'm not taking this.
Yeah.
I'm better than this.
Yeah.
And walk out. And the lady comes out and says, "No, you are actually entitled. You're the one that's entitled." And it was refusing. And it's just like a low point of like, this is not good.
Yeah.
So in terms of transitioning, I want to relate something from the UK to the US. So when you leave the military, how do you elect to do that? So in the UK, for example, we have a sign-off process, and you give 12 months notice of your intention to leave the military, and you sign off, or in my day, you physically signed a piece of paper. These days it's 7 clicks, and you have 12 months from that point to get your shit together and get out. And lots of people leave it until 11 months, 3 weeks, and 5 days and start thinking, right, well, what am I going to do now? I need to get a job of some variety. So in the US, is it a similar process, or is it a case of you can leave within a month, or do you do a certain contract agreement of the old way of doing it in the UK used to be 3 years, 5 years, or 22 years, and you'd sign up for that agreed time?
For enlisted, you have contracts. So you do, you either initially enlist for a certain amount of time, and then if you re-enlist, again, is a certain amount of time. For officers, we're indefinite, and then we offer our resignation, or we ask to retire, and then it's usually a year.
So you
long
get a decent
process.
amount of time to do that.
You usually do, yes.
Yeah.
Right.
You know you're going to do it, but you're still working a job and still trying to. So it still is. It's more than just transitioning to back into the civilian world. You still have a job that people are counting on you to do things and expecting you to be at work and do things.
Absolutely.
So it's, but yeah, you do get 3 years or a 4-year contract, and then, hey, it's coming up, and then 24 months out or 12 months out, hey, are you interested in staying in? No, I'm not. And then, then you'll start.
Because it's something we've spoken about several times on different podcasts. And, if there's people out there who are in the military and they know they're going to be transitioning out, you really need to get your shit together and get your ducks in a line. Yeah, and start thinking about, I know a guy recently who left the British Special Forces, Ben Garwood, and he had a 5-year transition point. So he knew that he was leaving in 5 years' time, and that was his career done. I think he was at that 23, 24-year point then. So he set up his own business, HR4K, in the UK, and worked through that, got that set up, staff in the building. So when he left, he was transitioning into a full working, established business. And he actually, he's recently just left, and he did it in 4 years and come out. And that's great, but Ben is certainly the minority in most cases of having that full vision and forethought to say, right, what am I going to do? What am I going to be? What would I like to be? What, am I going to start looking at police interviews and things like that? And I don't know whether enough people spend enough time putting their plan together about what they're going to do in transition and what's their life going to look like. What am I going to do? Where am I going to live? You guys in the US is such a huge country. You can be from one place and decide, that's not where I'm going to live. I'm going to live in this brand new place because I like the weather, I like the climate, I like to climb mountains in the sun there.
That's a good point, because I know, like you mentioned, 9/11 had an impact on coming in, but pre 9/11 joining, most joined because they didn't know what they wanted to do, so they joined, and then along the way they kind of said, I think I want to do this, and you transition to do that, and it's understanding that there's things along the way that are going to change that plan, and it's going to set it back, or it's going to, you might have joined single, you're not married and you don't have children, and this is what my plan is going to be, but then fast forward 5 years, and now it's, you're married and you have a couple kids, and there's more responsibilities, and that thing doesn't. It's not the same plan, but.
So we got a saying in the UK: no plan survives the first contact.
That's right, absolutely,
and
you have to set that into your plan, knowing that these things might be an obstacle, and what am I going to do when that happens? The other piece is some want to come in and then go back home. When they get back home after being gone a while, you look around and it's like, yeah, this is,
not really home
you
anymore.
didn't know that because you never left there. And once you left there and came back, it's like, yeah, they never changed. I've changed, and they haven't, and this is not where I want to be. So there's another obstacle.
Absolutely, and that's something we mention regularly. And one of the things I put out through my business in the UK is as people leave in the military, we need to transition and adapt back into the world and not expect people to adapt to us as veterans or as ex-military.
Yeah. We need to assimilate.
Absolutely. It's our job to do that and go back to being a human being in the civilian world. And like you said, Red, if you'd have left Ranger Bat with the same attitude and mentality, you wouldn't have lasted very long in Civvy Street before you probably would have ended up in jail or worse. Yeah,
and it hasn't been a smooth transition either. By no means it's not a direct line. I got out and this horrible stuff happened. Then it got a little bit better. Then I got horrible again. Then I got better. But it's a slow, steady progression to try to get better. It's a steady self-assessment. Those brutal looks in the mirror to realize like, hey, you're screwing up, man. And it's unfortunate because like you get this feeling that you're all alone. You're away from the brotherhood. You're away from the camaraderie, and all you have are everything in between your ears telling you what to do. So, getting out, I fell right back into old habits. I went right back into working in bars again. Like, oh, this is what I do, and I felt entitled to make a lot of money, not entitled to a handout from the government. But I felt like I should be bartending at a great bar. But thankfully, one of my Ranger brothers reached out to me and it's like, hey, I got this job over at Fort McGuire, I don't know, some post somewhere. And I was teaching tactics to the Air Force, the Air Advisory Academy. And I was teaching there and I got fired. And I got fired because I made fun of the Air Force. Sorry. So, but it was like good banter. It wasn't brutal. Like I was. Of course it was. I was.
By whose standards?
So I was sitting in the line, like in my car, and I see these like grown men playing ultimate frisbee and power walking for morning PT, and I'm like, oh my god, like, and I started videotaping them, and I was like, man, I should have joined the Air Force, and I like posted that, and I guess it is, and I wasn't hating, I was just like, oh, look at this, and my boss found out, and I got fired, and I was like, oh, and he's like, how dare you make fun of my squadron, and I'm like, oh, sorry, dude, so they fired me, and right there, I went back into depression, and then like. I started putting in those applications for any type of job, Home Depot, and I'm not talking trash on like the big companies, but things that weren't in my wheelhouse, things that are not congruent. Right. Yeah. These aren't congruent. Like I was looking for a paycheck, not something that would give me like joy or struggle, like good struggle, stress, I think it's called, something like that. So then I had another epiphany, and when I was working for the Air Advisory Academy, I was the dude that everybody went to for the most part. Like any question about tactics, they were coming to me. And I was like, man, they made a lot of money off me. So right there, I was like, screw this, I'm starting my own company. So that's like that night I made a decision. I started ATAC. And then I focused on things that just made me better. Like I had some other garbage job. I quit that. Oh, I was cutting grass for like $4 an hour too. I was doing that. I remember like my boss was a heroin addict, and I was like, yeah, this is bad. Like I'm a special operations Army Ranger, and I'm cutting grass with a heroin addict, and I have to answer to him to take a break. All right, not good. So, yeah.
You're figuring it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely figuring it out.
I think there's a great lesson there in terms of mindset and mentality. You know that you've got to take care of your family, yourself, whatever that may be, and that means bringing in a wage to pay your bills and not be on unemployment benefits.
Right.
And I think the military mindset is such a great thing that you would take the shittiest job ever just to be able to bring in that $4 an hour.
Yeah.
And have your own form of income coming into your bank account every week, every month, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Whereas lots of other people, and I'm not tarring everyone with the same brush by any means, but lots of other people would take the easy route out and just say, actually, I'm just going to claim unemployment benefit and just take whatever that is per week.
Yeah, I couldn't live
because there's probably wasn't much difference, I bet, in earning $4 an hour.
Yeah. But fast forward 2 years later, I was working and this is after I owned my company. I became a pretty good firearms instructor. I worked for a couple other companies as well. And it was the winter time, which is pretty brutal for firearms instructors, especially in Pennsylvania. And I needed to make some money. So I had 4 rifles on the table. And one of my students, Paul, walks up and he's like, Red, you're selling your 700? You're selling your sniper rifle? And it was the rifle I bought for myself as a graduation gift from sniper school.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, yeah, I'm selling it. And he's like, why? And I'm like, dude, I got to pay the mortgage, man. Like, that's the priority is take care of my wife and now take care of my daughter, Savannah. So I'll get another gun. Like,
Yeah, but it's not the gun.
right.
Right.
Yeah.
But you gotta put your pride aside too.
Yeah.
That's where you learn what's the priorities are at that point.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about you; it's about your family.
Right.
So
So tell us about ATAC then.
Yeah. So ATAC is my firearms instruction company. I teach only small groups. So the most I'll do is 4 people.
great.
Yeah, very small. And I built the company around like what everybody always, I wish I could get one-on-one training. I wish I could get one-on-one training. And I started thinking about like the type of people that want to learn how to shoot, and they're either afraid of crowds, like they don't want to be around other people, they don't want to show failure, they have this ego. They're victims, like some victims that want to have protection, that are nervous around other guns, that need that personal one-on-one connection. There's again, ego for police officers or professionals that don't want to show that, hey, they might suck at something, or I'll be able to analyze little tiny things that you wouldn't be able to get in a large group. Everybody's just shooting at the same time. We can make minor adjustments on the target or maybe your stance, but I can't get in your mind. As far as ATAC goes, I'm going to try to get in your mind and try to change like those neuro pathways to make the right decision to make you a better shooter.
Under stress?
Yeah, so the way it goes further, there are stress shoots. One of my courses, I actually have you hold a baby doll and shoot. Makes it pretty stressful, especially for parents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
really cool. So how can people learn more about ATAC, get in contact with you, especially if they're up there in that area?
My website is advancedtac.com. Advance is in the active moving forward. TAC is in tactical. I wish I would have changed the name because everybody puts advanced, like past tense. So I always have to correct them, but whatever.
Yeah. That's one of those things as an entrepreneur, you never like,
In the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you kind of figure it out and stuff. Well, I appreciate you coming on, man, and sharing your story and telling everything about it. And, you came all the way from Philly to join us here, so I really appreciate that. And I think that what you've done and what you've accomplished in even such a short amount of time is pretty commendable. I mean, and the fact that you're still looking, obviously, for new adventures by joining SWAT, by taking on new MOSs and skills and civil affairs and all those types of things, you're not really resting on your laurels. You're looking for something that still keeps you active, keeps you engaged, and all those types of things. Not to mention, a family member, a family man, having your company as an entrepreneur, the whole thing, you got the full gamut going on. So really commend you on everything that's going on. I wish you nothing but great success, and appreciate it again.
Thanks for having me.